Hi everyone, this is Richard. In this video, we're going to make a slight detour again and go over some of the on methods. Before we had talked about Onclick, right? And so I think that was the only one we did. So let's go on some other types of on methods themselves. So for example's sake, I made another select element. ID select is equals ID equals select. First, second, and third. It's just nice and simple. We're just using this as an example. And then we're going to go back here, instantiate it, select element select equals query selector select, right? And so we're going to create the object, and then we're going to use event listeners, the on methods. So for the submit, we already have on click, and on the select one, we're going to have on change. And when we activate this, it's going to say it works, okay? So the on click type of method itself, when you think about it, what does that mean? What that means basically is you click on it, right? So it's not rocket science in that respect. But what about other things like on change? Let's just do that with the submit element. So if I change it, it should trigger, right? But it's not actually triggering. Why not? Well, the reason why is because the state of the element is not actually changing, is it? You're clicking on it, but the actual state, the actual existence doesn't change at all. Unlike the date input element, when you change this, the state of the element changes. The click function, right? You click on it, the state is different from before. It's actually changed, right? And the same thing with drop downs. So with the select element, we're going to change the state of it. But what if I go to 1? We didn't change anything, right? Nothing gets triggered. I change it to 2, it triggers. I change it to 2 again, nothing triggers. I change it to 1, it triggers. It's going all the way over. It's just typing it works. So you don't see any changes, but it actually is triggering anytime I change the state or value of the element. Okay, so that's the on change. On blur, this one really confused me for a while. By the way, if you can go to, just as a review, W3 Schools, look through all of these things. How do you know? Well, to put dot on, hang on a second, dot on, and then look through some of these things and check it out. Okay, we'll go over the drag and drop in the future, I hope. On like things like on abort, that really, I don't know what the heck that does. According to W3 Schools, it's mostly for Internet Explorer, so I gotta be honest, I don't really know what that is. Some of these elements are a little bit more not commonly used, I'll put it that way. When you do use your next web page, web application, or whatever, think about how you're interacting with these elements also. So when you look at the behavior, wait a minute, is that an on click, an on change? What is that actually doing? And that's one of the ways in which I personally find it easier to actually remember some of these methods and some of these on methods. Okay, so I'm going to say save all, restart it. Okay, so this one should be on blur. So what on blur actually refers to is if you put the focus on it and then you take the focus away, it's the taking away of the focus that activates it. So here, no problem. I take the focus away and click here, then it activates. Okay, so how is this helpful in any way? Well, if you have like a screen or several different screens, depending on where you click here, where your focus is, when you move away from it, then it will actually trigger an event. Maybe something like, please don't leave this side of the screen or something like that. This as opposed to on focus, it's just the opposite. So on focus means not when you leave, but when you focus on this area. Now, when I click here, oh, I gotta choose a date. It's gonna crash, sorry. Let's try this again. This is one of those things where when you click on it, it's the same thing because you're bringing the focus to the submit. So on the on click and submit in OnClick and OnFocus in this context is the same thing. But at the same time, again, if we're talking about different screens, different sections, different elements, and you put the focus on the different things, it'll actually trigger it. So how is that useful? I gotta be honest, I really don't remember the last web application that actually used that. So I'm not really sure if it's going to be all that important. If it is, great, go ahead and use it. But that's just a review. We always have the single click. Now here's the on double click. That's not rocket science, right? You pretty much know what's going to happen right there. So click, click, double click. Then it actually triggers it, no problem. On change, selecting the on change, I think we did that already. Let me think here. On mouse over, let's try that. On mouse over, that's a nice one. So on mouse over, you don't actually have to trigger anything. If you bring the mouse, I'm not going to click anything, over to submit, it automatically triggers it, okay? So let's try that again. There's a little border there. As soon as I approach it, it just triggers it automatically. Okay, so that's kind of one of those neat things that when you go on over it, sometimes like a tooltip or something like that, if you need to trigger an event, look out for those things. All right, and then there's, if you want to use like your keys on the screen on key down, so I'm gonna do, it's gonna crash again. The key down sounds like what it does when you push the key down. So I'm going to click on submit. And the reason I'm clicking on it is just to bring the focus there, right? So I'm not actually triggering the event. But if I push a key, just for example, I'm going to push the space key down, it triggers it, right? This is opposed to on key up. Again, we focus our attentions on the submit. I'm going to push the press down. Okay, you could see that I just pushed it down, but it doesn't do anything until I let up. And when I let up, it actually triggers it also. This is opposed to OnKeyPress. Is that OnKeyPress? There we go. OnKeyPress, which is, I'm going to focus there. I'm going to press it down, but on certain buttons, like I'm going to push on the control. That doesn't trigger it. You notice it? Watch. Well, you can't watch because nothing's happening, right? But if I push a space bar, it's still not working. Okay, what's going on here? Oh, of course. So one more time, I'm going to push the control, the shift, the alt, nothing really works. Space bar, now it actually works. So the difference between on key press and on key down is simply that certain on key press, alt, control, shift doesn't actually activate what you want it to do. It's not any character itself. The nice thing about on key press is, let me see how we can do this. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'm just going to say query selector results dot text. I'm sorry. Query selector results. Let's do this var result equals query selector dot result. Then I'm going to say result. How am I going to do this? I'm getting there. Hang on. Please bear with me. Result dot text equals, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get this value right here because this is a key press. This is just a variable, okay? And I'm going to say text equals key press dot. First of all, I don't really know what this is. I'm going to say what runtime type is this actually because I got to be honest, I just don't know. So I'm going to review this and on OnKeyPress, runtime type dot to string. Keyboard event. So it's going to be keyboard event key press. So that's the type. So key press. So then what I'm going to say is key press dot, what can I actually do? So I could say key code itself, character code. Let's experiment with some of these things. For example, so I'm going to, dot to string. Because it is a text after all, right? On the submit, I'm going to push the G button. 103. The G corresponds to value 103. This is F102. Okay, so that's what the key code actually is. But let's see some other values themselves. So character code. Did I just do that? Key code, character code. And it's pretty much the same thing. Other things, for example, if you want to say, hey, what value actually is this? So is this a control key? Is this control key that you're actually pressing? I'm going to push the G, false, F, false, control. It should be true, but it actually is not working. Control key. Oh, wait a minute. OnKeyPress. It's supposed to be on key down. Sorry about that. Because remember, on OnKeyPress, the control key does not actually get activated. So it has to be, so it doesn't even acknowledge it. Focus here, F, G, space, control. Shift, control. Okay, so it actually will say, hey, are you actually pushing on the control key? And we can go down around inside of here, hash code, key location. Dot to string. And you can have the hash code of these characters. And these characters are known, once we have these codes themselves, we can actually reverse them and tell what keys they actually are. I actually don't remember how to do something like that, but you can actually determine, so what that event that when you push on the key itself, you can actually, maybe that's the next video, you can actually determine what key you're actually, hang on a second, what key you're actually pressing, and you can actually tell us what that actually is, okay? So those are the basics of the on functions themselves. Go through them. When you look at this, type on, control space, and look down and just check out some of these things, see what they actually do, and think about the web applications and how you actually utilize these methods themselves, and play around with them and think about how you would want to do that in your own web application. That's the best way to learn. Okay, thank you.